Hey everybody, welcome back to the I Play 2 podcast. I'm your host, Rob Adler. This week, theater actor Steve Cena joins the show. On stage, he has had roles in A Few Good Men, Little Shop of Horrors, Avenue Q, and Goodnight Moon. Also, Steve has won 2 Theater Association of New York State awards for his acting in Zoo Story and The Last Nickel. His younger brother, John Cena, is a megastar with the WWE and has headlined multiple WrestleMania shows. Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Thank you so much for doing this. I greatly appreciate it. My first question for you is, how did your love of theater come to be?
Oh, wow. I think it really solidified when I got to college here in Rochester, New York. I transferred from Vermont Technical College and I needed to get an elective to fill out my schedule. And I kind of panicked and I just put down intro to theater and got in the class. I was just expecting it to be a class. But once we started getting into it, we were required to put on performances, nothing big, but staged reading type things. It all of a sudden started to click inside that I really like doing this and started doing theater with RIT players. And the rest kind of went from there.
What was the first role that you had that you said, you know what, I really like this. Maybe I can at least do this as a hobby?
The character was Wib Windust. I played an abusive ex-husband. And there was a scene where I needed to intimidate my ex-wife and the thief that were in her apartment. The reaction that I was getting out of them and from the audience, I had never in my wildest dreams expected. And during this one section where I'm really berating the wife, I could hear this woman in the front row say, "For God's sake, just give me the gun." And I was like, yep, there we go. That's what I want.
That's a good reaction. You don't get many better reactions than that.
Oh, no. If you can get someone to just react genuinely, whatever the emotion is, they're laughing, they're crying, they hate you. It's the most satisfying feeling because you know that you've done your job.
What's been a favorite role for you that you've played?
Oh, hands down, I would say Avenue Q. That was a dream show for me. Getting to play Trekkie Monster and Nikki and Bad Idea Bear. I was just on cloud 9. It was just incredible.
For people that don't know about Avenue Q, could you mind telling them what it's about?
It's an affectionate send-up of Sesame Street geared more towards adults. So the main character, Princeton, has just graduated from college and he's moving to the big city and needs to find a place to live that's not too expensive and ends up moving into Avenue Q. And it's basically life lessons that you didn't really learn growing up, like how the world is unfair and uncaring and how racism is still out there and the struggles of relationships and growing up and how that idealistic world that children shows kind of instilled in us just isn't out there. But at the end of it all, it's okay that that's the way that life is.
Trekkie Monster. I love Trekkie Monster. I love Cookie Monster. So what was it like to kind of bring that role to life?
It was one of those things where I guess I was just right person, right time, at least the first time I did it. He's such an insane character. He's this porn addicted shut-in and he sounds like Cookie Monster. So I guess I have this ability, I forget what it's called. My throat has some extra skin in it that makes doing things like this really simple for me. And it doesn't hurt or cause me any vocal strain. So to just be able to do that so effortlessly and working with the puppets and just getting the reactions from the audience, it was just so amazing.
After hearing that impression, I'm never going to do mine again.
Well, thank you. You're very kind.
Growing up, were you always kind of a performer in the sense of you kind of liked having the spotlight on?
Looking back on it, yes. And it's funny because it's like I didn't realize it at the time. It never occurred to me it could be something that anybody could do. But anybody who knew me growing up, if you were around me, it's like I was always on but I didn't exactly know where to direct the energy. Because, like I said, the first time that I ever actually got to do an actual performance was in college. Prior to that, oddly enough, I ended up jumping into a part for a play that my father was directing for the high school drama club at the time. And that was just a freak accident.
I didn't know your dad did stuff with Drama Club. I knew he did stuff with pro wrestling, but I didn't know he did stuff with Drama Club.
I think it kind of got put out of my head when you grow up with something and kind of it's there, but you don't really think about it. Looking back on my childhood now, I remember my dad being involved in community theater. I can remember visiting some sets of shows that he would be working on. He would take me to a couple, but it didn't click as to what it was that he was doing. And sometime after I started performing regularly, the memory started to come back and then it just clicked. It's like, oh, okay, that's what he was doing.
Has he ever been able to see you perform?
Yes, actually, he's been to almost every show that I've done, and I love him so much and appreciate him so much for supporting me all this time. It's the nicest thing I can possibly think of.
It's kind of a neat way to bond with your dad because you're kind of doing and performing in a similar way.
Yes, but doing it again was also kind of an accident because once I left RIT, I didn't really do theater at all. The concept of community theater to me, it wasn't there. And I don't know why, but all of a sudden just started getting back into it. Somebody would suggest I go audition for the show. It's like, well, okay, if you think so. And then it just kind of led to another and another and another. And it just kind of went from there.
We'll get back to theater in a second, but what was it like growing up in West Newbury, Massachusetts?
Oh, wow. This is my perspective. So please take everything I say with a grain of salt, and it's through my eyes. It was very, very plain and boring. It was the most quiet, picturesque, small town I could ever imagine. In terms of my own life, it wasn't great. I really had trouble at school making friends. High school, junior high school wasn't great for me. I had a small group of friends, but it was very difficult. And once I ended up getting to college out of state, I just kind of left and I never really went back. I'd go back to visit my family occasionally, but there was nothing there that would really draw me back, if that makes any sense.
Sometimes you just need to get away.
Something was just like, you know what? I'm not supposed to be here. Not exactly sure where I'm supposed to be, but I don't think I'm supposed to be here.
What was it like to grow up with four other brothers?
Oh my goodness. It was tough. My mother did the best she could trying to keep everybody in line. And I guess because of the type of personality I had growing up, I didn't really get treated as the oldest, if that makes any sense. So I think that added to my stress a little bit. Most of my younger brothers at the time were more adversarial towards me than looking up to me. So it made things a little bit stressful growing up with them, but I remember good times with them. I have such fond memories of some family holidays and trips to amusement parks or water parks. There were some good moments in there, but it was tough for me.
As you and your brothers have all gotten older, has that relationship gotten closer?
Oh, definitely. There is absolutely truth to the adage, time heals all wounds. As we've grown into adulthood, we've absolutely gotten much closer. I'm still kind of a quiet person. I still just tend to keep to myself. But if I'm home visiting, we'll go out to dinner. We're very friendly with each other. It's great seeing my family again.
You mentioned family time and the holidays. What's your favorite holiday to be around family?
It's probably going to be cliche, but it's going to be a toss up between Thanksgiving and Christmas. With the exception of the gifts, there was something about those two holidays growing up where it just kind of felt right. The good food, all your relatives are around you, and just this nice, comfortable feeling. And I would go with those two.
You decide to leave Massachusetts. Where did you go from there?
I left to go to college. The first college I attended was Vermont Technical College up in Randolph Center, Vermont. I majored in computer science and electrical engineering and had a brief stint with them on their radio station, WVTC. but it was an associate's degree. So my father recommended that I get a bachelor's degree. So I looked at what colleges VTC had some arrangement with to see what credits would transfer, and RIT was one of them. And because I still needed to just kind of get away, I decided, you know what? I'm going to go with that one and head on out there and see what happens. And it almost was kind of like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I went for a week, got stuck for 15 years. So I came out here for college. Regrettably, I didn't complete it, but I just stayed in the city.
You sound like W.C. Fields and his week in Philadelphia. In addition to Goodnight Moon, Little Shop of Horrors, what other roles have you played?
One of the earliest roles that I can remember was doing a student play at NTID, which is the National Technical Institute for the Deaf here in Rochester, New York. It was Rumpelstiltskin, and I played, I think it was the butler and the king in this adaptation. I've played Michael, the lead in Boys in the Band, play about homosexuality in the 60s. I also played Ned Weeks in The Normal Heart. I played failed presidential assassin Sam Bick in Stephen Sondheim's Assassins. Charlie Fox in David Mamet's Speed the Plow. God, there's so many more I could probably think of.
What's it like to do a play for the deaf?
For me personally, there's nothing like it. And I say that with the most respect and regard. It's such an amazing experience. For me, what it really is live action voiceover work, because depending on how the play goes, it's really the deaf actor that's creating the character and the personality of the character on stage. So I don't necessarily get to do it the way that I would envision the character. I have to try to match my energy to them to make sure that I'm bringing to life vocally what they're bringing to life to the stage. And one of the things that makes it particularly difficult for me is I, in fact, do not know sign language. So I end up relying on those around me to help me through it so that they're staying on topic or where they should be in the script so that I can. And actually, there was one instance where that went horribly wrong. Lysistrata was the play. We had just gone through a section of the scene, and one of the characters, I'm watching what they're doing on stage, and something in the back of my mind's like, I've seen this before. And then one of the voice actors next to me leans over and says, they've gone back. They're looping again. I started to freak out because it's like, oh my God, I can't follow this. I eventually figured out what was going on and got back into it. But it's both an advantage and a liability, because on the one hand, by not knowing sign language, I can be truer to the script. Whereas those who do know sign language, they'll accidentally slip into interpreter mode. So rather than actually say the lines from the script, they'll start interpreting what the deaf actor is doing. So it's a little bit of give and take there, but it is one of the most incredible experiences I've ever been a part of.
Make sure that I understand this. So there's basically 2 actors for each role?
At the base, yes, that is correct. And then it depends on how the director chooses to stage the play. There's basically 3 different ways that it will happen. The first one I call the radio play or the voiceover, where all of the deaf actors are seen on stage, but all of the voice actors are hidden. We're either up at the balcony, in the front row, but the point is we are heard and not seen. The next way I've done them is what I'll call a hybrid, where sometimes the speaking actors will be on stage with the deaf actors, not necessarily all of them, but some of them, and you do the play as normal. And then the last one is full mixed, where yes, for every character on the stage, the speaking actor is also the same character on the stage.
Well, this is going to sound like an uneducated question, but what is the easiest for you and what you do to perform for the deaf?
Absolutely, the voiceover. It also makes it a lot simpler. So, for example, if the situation on stage is very physical, I don't have to worry about being up there getting physical with them and possibly getting out of breath or worrying about something else that could go on stage. because I'm just voicing it and I can just focus on what's going on stage, I can kind of compensate and do things that I wouldn't normally be able to do. Being on stage makes things interesting. For example, Macbeth, I had done with NTID, and again, that's the National Technical Institute for the Deaf, where I was voicing Macbeth, but I was also a member of the dinner party. So, for those that aren't entirely familiar with it, during the dinner party, Macbeth sees a ghost of someone who he's murdered and he starts losing it. So, for me, vocally, I have to be completely freaking out, but physically, I have to be reacting completely bemused like the rest of the dinner guests. Like, what is wrong with him? So, it can make things very difficult, but also very interesting.
How did you initially start working with NTID? Because that sounds like something that would be a lot of fun, but also quite a challenge.
Actually, it was kind of by accident. One of my friends at the time, who is a full-time interpreter, knew that I had done some kind of theater before and was like, hey, the student production that I mentioned earlier, they're kind of looking for somebody to just do a voice. Would you kind of be interested in like coming in and just all you got to do is just sit there and read the paper, don't have to memorize anything? You know what? Sure, I'll give it a shot. So I did it and I kind of enjoyed it. It was interesting because I'd never been exposed to anything like this before. And the supervisor of the class was, you know what? I really need you to be in Midsummer Night's Dream. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. I just became one of their regular actors for a little while, and it was wonderful.
That's very cool. You mentioned you had a role in Assassins, and I know audiences sometimes respond differently to that. Have you ever had an interesting response to that?
Oh, yes. The main reason I think in that specific show was at the end of it. Oh, my goodness. I can't believe I'm blanking. The Kennedy assassin.
Lee Harvey Oswald?
Oswald. Oh, my goodness. I can't believe I blanked. Basically, the other assassins come back out to convince Oswald that he needs to shoot Kennedy, basically to validate their existence. And the way that we opted to stage it was Kennedy was the audience. And while the gun was not real, it was just a block of wood, like to freak people out. But just the simple fact that we staged it that way, and you had this gunman that was pointing at the audience as the energy is building, you could just see the people getting really uncomfortable, which was the point, but it was kind of unnerving to get that reaction out of them.
Was that an every night thing, or was there one night that it was worse than others?
That was pretty consistent. It didn't seem to deviate too much. I know this may sound weird, but the right amount of discomfort, it was still very off-putting for the audience. But I mean, the whole point of the musical is not really to justify why they did what they did, but at least to try to give a glimpse into the minds of what was going on with these people, right or wrong.
It's a very entertaining musical to actually read the script for, because I actually think without the music, it's strangely almost more moving.
I can absolutely see that. Oh my God, the monologue that I had to deliver when I'm driving to assassinate Nixon, it was so draining. But to get that audience reaction, to just take them on that roller coaster, 1 second it's actually funny, and then slam down into reality and heartbreak was just amazing.
And that's what you live for.
No question. It's extremely hard to do because if you're doing it right, you'll get the reaction that you want. But to have to like look inside yourself and your experiences to find the energy to bring out whatever the emotion is, but specifically sorrow, it's very, very taxing.
Do you ever have fans that come up afterwards to talk to you about how much they've been moved by something you've done?
A few times, yes. Definitely with the Normal Heart. That one kind of caught me off guard. It's kind of funny. One of the people who was involved with the show, who had seen me do other things, but never seen me do anything like this level of drama before. After I came out of the dressing room and I started to walk out to the lobby, she stopped me and she just stared me in the face and said, "Who are you? I know you as a person, and yet seeing you up on stage, you were just someone else." And it was just so amazing to me. And it just really caught me off guard.
It's nice when you can move somebody regardless of what it is like that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Regardless of the emotion, whether it's intended or otherwise, going to see something you thought was going to be funny and it inadvertently turns out to be something that's really rubbing you the wrong way. If the theater and the performance is good, then that should always happen. It sounds a little strange, I know, but something inside you should kind of take over and you should have at least a really strong sense of feeling.
Have you ever had a negative audience reaction where maybe somebody walks out and that distracts you?
I did actually. During one of the productions of A Few Good Men, there was a woman in the audience that for some reason didn't read the notes beforehand and got up and left when there was all the swearing. She just couldn't handle all the foul language. And we were all kind of perplexed because it's not a new show. I mean, it's been around for years. One other one that I can think of, when I was at RIT, I convinced our drama club to do a play called Jeffrey, which was set in the early 90s in the onset of AIDS. And during one of the scenes, the lead falls in love with somebody who's HIV positive, and they kiss when they meet at the gym. And there were people that, as soon as that happened, they got up and left. It was just too much. We're talking, this was around 98, 99 plus or minus. So, I mean, sensibilities were different. But just to see that level of, say, intolerance, it totally blew me away. Like, I really didn't expect that kind of reaction out of some of the audience.
It's one of those of the era thing, but people weren't ready for it, I guess.
I would 100% agree with you. In that show, I wasn't in it. I was the director. And just the experience that I had, it took me, I think, 2 or 3 attempts to convince the drama club alone that this would be a worthwhile play to do. It was just an uphill battle the entire time. And I had never really directed anything before. So all of a sudden, I'm directing this 90-minute 2-act production of this comedic yet deep material. And it put me off directing, I think, pretty much forever. I only directed one other show after that, and that was just to help a friend out. But it just traumatized me, I'll say, so much. It really put me off being in the director's chair ever again. I'd much rather be on stage.
Jeffrey's kind of a unique dark comedy to choose. What made you gravitate towards Jeffrey?
I think for me, it was just what I was really going through in my own life at the time. I realized in high school that I was gay, but again, because of the timing, like I was in high school in the late 80s and 90s. And then when I went to college, I even remember the college didn't have an LGBT club. And when they started putting up posters for when they were trying to arrange, people were writing graffiti all over them. And then finally, the RA of my dorm put up these big pieces of poster board with a note that said, if you have anything to say it here. I left for my classes at 7 a.m. on campus. By the time I came back from lunch, it was full of hate speech. And I'm sitting here like, oh my God, if anybody finds out about this, I'm going to be killed. And it wasn't until I got to Rochester at around 95 that I started to feel more relaxed and just able to be myself. The city itself was more accepting, but sensibilities were changing. So I didn't feel as ostracized. And to me, when I saw the movie and then realized it was a play, it just seemed like something that needed to be done. I'd never seen anything like that before, let alone performed. And with everything just seemed to be happening, at least in the city and on campus at the time, it just felt like something that should be done.
When you were at Vermont and saw all that hate speech, did that cause a lot of mental trouble, I guess I would say, for lack of a better phrase?
No question. Like I had said, in high school, I wasn't the popular kid. I was definitely one of the outcasts. So then throw on top of that, that I have now moved away from my home. I'm now sharing a room with someone. They don't really know me. I don't really know them. And to find out that I'm surrounded by people that if I'm just who I am, I really run the risk of being hurt, it stressed me out. Definitely for the rest of that year. It probably turned subconscious after that. But I remember the first year when they tried that I was just terrified. I didn't actually formally come out until I moved to Rochester. And oddly enough, The whole way that my family kind of found out that I was gay was when my dad and my aunt came to watch Jeffrey. So there was that too.
What was the family's response when they found out?
Oh, I will never forget. The short version is that my family is very supportive, but specifically that night, I will never forget. So, curtain call's done. Actors have taken their bows. I come out on stage to talk with some of the actors. Lights are up in the house, and I turn around and I can see my father and my aunt sitting in the audience. And my aunt is just giddy. She couldn't be happier. I can see her politely still clapping, cheering, and everything. And then next to her, I can just kind of see my dad looking at me. And it was one of those looks where it's like, oh God, are we really going to do this tonight? Really? We went out to dinner that night, and it was the very first time I'd had an alcoholic beverage in front of my family. I was of age. There was no way I could feel like I get through it. And we started talking gradually about it. And I'll never forget this. My dad at one point leaned in and looked at me and said, you know, I'm a lot more forgiving than people give me credit for. And something in that moment that at least told me, you know what, it may not be right now, but at least it's going to be okay. There's not going to be any real ruffled feathers. There's probably going to be some stuff that we're going to need to work through, but we're going to be all right. And that was a huge, huge load off of my mind.
What advice do you have for other young people who are LGBTQ about coming out and being comfortable in their own shoes doing it?
I think the best advice that I would give is it's on your terms. Don't let somebody force you into doing it. Let it happen, I'll say, organically. You will do it when you are ready. But with that, be prepared for some things to change. Friends I had that no longer speak to me because once they found out, they just couldn't stand to be around me. It's going to sound strange to say expect the unexpected, but you may be surprised to find out some people that you thought were going to be in your corner aren't. But make sure that you surround yourself with the people who are supportive of you and who love you for who you are, and you're going to make it through it just fine.
I could understand why you left West Newbury because from the little I know about it, I know it's small and I know it's very conservative.
Oh, yeah. And definitely for me, started in high school because, like most of us, once you start hitting puberty and your hormones and stuff start to kick in and things start to gel in your head, it's like, oh, crap. What do I do? I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And at least for the timing for me, even if I went to, say, my high school guidance counselor at the time, they weren't either properly equipped or even equipped at all to deal with that situation. So I had to kind of navigate this minefield completely on my own.
The last question I have on this, and it's somewhat of a sensitive one because I know it can drive people to it. Did you ever have any thoughts about ending your life?
Honestly, yeah, I did. At least once while I was in Vermont. Everything just kind of reached a boiling point that I didn't know where I could go, who I could turn to. I couldn't take the ridicule and the stress anymore. And I tried, and it didn't work. I'm very thankful that it didn't work. But there were a couple times things just got so bad that it's like, wow, rock bottom is a basement. I just didn't know what else to do. But thankfully, I did have some supportive friends at college who really stuck with me and got me through it. And without them, man, I'm not exactly sure what would have happened, but people definitely matter.
Getting back to brighter things, what's a favorite part for you about being an actor?
I would have to say, and this may sound funny, the character creation. Because while all plays have the character descriptions and where they fit in the story, getting to invent who this person is and what their motivations are, because everybody's different, everybody's creativity is different. So I may bring something to a character that somebody else may not, or interpret something in such a way that others don't. One example I could think of, not that I did it, but I remember seeing it online. I saw a production of Little Shop of Horrors where they did it where Seymour was a psychopath and the plant wasn't real. And while I don't necessarily agree with the choice, that's a direction that you can go in. So being able to go in and mold these characters into who they're going to be for this brief blip of existence is so much fun.
Could you kind of take me through a character molding process of a role that you played that you're particularly proud of?
When I did David Mamet's Speed the Plow, the character I played was Charlie Fox. And aside from the fact that Mamet is theater kryptonite, for some people it's very difficult to watch. It's very difficult to perform. Mamet has his own writing style. But as I worked through that script very slowly, and I started interacting with the other actors, I started to get my sense of who the character really was. He's this Hollywood guy who's trying to get a movie made. But the more I started to interact and get into the subtext, what I started to notice was I was becoming more organically invested. So it kind of helped keep everything grounded. And I let myself go and be in the moment and just have this rapid fire, intense exchange with these other two people. And it just felt so good.
Feeling good is what you want, but there's a sense of there's that relatability. You get an interest to it, you dive into it, and all of a sudden, I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you get other actors on your level, or at least that know how to feed off of each other's energy. So you have this synergistic family up there. It's unbelievable.
You've won a couple of TANYS awards, which are theater awards for the state of New York. What's it like to win one of those?
At the time, I was kind of shocked. At first, I didn't even know that this even existed. But then to actually get the awards, it was very flattering and validating. Sad part about the one that we got for Zoo Story, we reluctantly had to drop out of, I don't want to say competition, but the plays would progress and there would be a winner because the Zoo Story actually had gotten rewritten because Edward Albee, I believe, was tired of people charging money for doing the show and wanted it to just remain and be this independent work that it was. So what he ended up doing was he paired it with another play called At Home at the Zoo. But what happened is the end of the Zoo Story, you don't find out the reason why Jerry ended up going to the zoo. It just kind of ends. And having seen the show before, I brought this up to the director. We looked at the script, and sure enough, the scene is gone. It's not there. So he decided, no, that's right. We need to put that back in. So we found a copy of the script that did have it and did the show that way. Well, the problem was the script that we submitted to TANYS wasn't the script that we were performing. So while it was, in fact, the Zoo Story, it wasn't the version of the Zoo Story that they were given. So when that discrepancy came to light, they were like, we're sorry, you can keep the awards that you earned for doing the show, but we're not going to be able to allow you to progress to the quote unquote next level because of this.
Well, that kind of stinks.
It did. And actually, it kind of reminded me of the fact that you can't make those kind of changes to a show without permission. When you get the script to whatever the show is, the intent is that that is, in fact, what you're going to be putting on. And in some cases, you may have to make small accommodations to work with the space, but you are not allowed to take free range liberties with the script that you are given. And in all honesty, we were in the wrong to do it.
Did that whole situation at all sour you on the experience, or was it just kind of something you flushed and moved on?
I wouldn't say flushed. I would probably say more processed because there are a lot of things that can happen. That was in the context of winning in awards and being part of, again, I hate using the word competition, but that's the only one I can think of at the moment. But there are other things that can happen in a show, like friction between actors or accidents on stage. But for that one, I took it as a learning experience because I mean, I had never won anything like this before. So all this was new to me. And I'm one of those people that I like to learn. If I make a mistake, I would very much appreciate it if you could come at me and tell me what it is. But I mean, be constructive because I want to do the best that I can do. And that's how you improve.
You mentioned a little bit about accidents on stage. Have you ever had one?
Oh my God, yes. It wouldn't be live theater if there wasn't. One that comes to mind was somebody actually being malicious. One of the shows I had done was The Boys in the Band, and the lead, Michael, is a recovering alcoholic. So one of the ways he copes is he has club soda that he'll drink. And later on at the birthday party, when Harold arrives, I'm going to break out a bottle of Puy Fuissé to give it to him for his birthday. Well, somebody on the last day of the show decided that it would be a smashing idea to shake up everything that was carbonated that I had to open. So when it got to the first part where I had to pop open the club soda to grab a drink, it exploded all over me. So I had to do my best for the rest of at least till intermission to try to get through any carbonated mishaps, knowing that the rest were probably going to be booby trapped. Needless to say, the director, myself, and the rest of the cast were none too thrilled. Another I can think of didn't happen to me, but happened to an actor that was in front of me. I was doing a production with NTID of A Midsummer Night's Dream. And the way the set had been constructed, it was a rake stage, so there was an incline, and grooves were cut into the stage to allow set pieces to slide in and out. It was absolutely gorgeous and was just such an amazing show to work on. But when it got to the point in the story where I played Oberon, we were going to release the people from the curse and they're going to wake up and everything's going to be fine. So we're all starting to file out of the forest and we're walking up the incline. And when we get to the top, we're all going to break off left and right. So we start to break off. And I notice the actor in front of me all of a sudden just dropped to the floor. And I couldn't figure out what's going on. I looked down very quickly. He had accidentally stepped a little too far to the right. And he was just skinny enough that his leg sank right down in between this plywood groove. So very quickly, I reached down and grabbed him and lifted him up as quickly as possible and safely as possible to get him off of the stage. And walking off, I can look down at his leg and I can see the costume's been ripped apart a little bit. He's bleeding. Thankfully, he was able to recover and didn't have much left to do in the show, but expect the unexpected.
Oh, definitely. I can imagine your colleague bleeding. Holy cow, that must have been fun. If this were your brother, I would say he was getting color.
Oh, God, yes. There's one other time I can think of. My father was doing a show with the high school drama club and needed me to fill in for this one part. And at one point, and I've never done really theater before this. So at one point, character is supposed to come out with this gigantic powder puff when I yell makeup. And she's supposed to smack this aging old actress in the face with it. Big puff goes everywhere. Everybody gets a laugh and the play goes on. So I scream makeup and nothing happens. I say it again. Nothing happens. So I'm 13 or so on stage freaking out in front of this audience. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. And for whatever reason, my brain kicked in and I made some off the cuff remark to cover, got major laughs. The cast is cracking up. We got through it, but I had never felt more like a deer in headlights in my entire life. I walked back into the music room, which was behind the stage, and I just kind of sat down trembling. I can't believe I just survived this. Oh my God, I went off script. I didn't know what to do. Next thing I know, the doors fly open and everybody is running towards me and cheering me and hugging me and all this stuff. It got me right back on track, but it was just one of those incredible roller coaster rides that you never forget.
You don't really know what the reaction is going to be until it happens.
Honestly, I did not expect the audience to crack up as much as they did. And the line was, these things always happen to me when I'm on a budget. And they just lost it.
Growing up, who were your idols, whether it be on stage, on screen, perhaps an author?
Gilda Radner, Dan Aykroyd, early SNL, Peter Sellers. There was just something about seeing these people just being able to make people laugh like that. I'm one of those people where I like intelligent humor, if that makes sense. Benny Hill was another one. The fact that he was able to walk this line with this body humor and yet not go too far and still make the jokes that he was able to make was just brilliant. For authors, Douglas Adams, definitely a big Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy fan. Terry Pratchett, loved the Discworld series.
It's interesting that you mentioned Gilda Radner and Dan Aykroyd. What particularly about them really was something that you enjoyed in their performance, their delivery?
Definitely more so Gilda than Dan. Just the way that she presented herself and the way that she could come up with these characters, and no matter how farcical or implausible they were, that you could just get on board and have this incredible laugh ride with her.
My mom's favorite SNL character ever was
Rosanna Dana. Oh, classic. One for Aykroyd that definitely sticks out. Point Counterpoint with Jane Curtin. One particular one, Lee Marvin, the actor. Oh my God, just the rapid fire delivery and the jokes, his delivery and everything about that sketch, I just adored.
Do you remember his consumer probe he did with Candice Bergen?
No, I don't remember that one.
He was a guy named Mr. Mainway, and they were making hazardous toys. And Candice Bergen says, well, this toy could kill somebody. And he's like, what's wrong with Johnny Switchblade Adventure Punk? And he presses the character, and switchblades come out of his hands.
That almost reminds me of the Monty Python sketch Crunchy Frog.
Yeah.
They're making the candies out of real frogs. It's like, well, what do you expect? If you took the bones out, it wouldn't be crunchy.
I love Python, too. I could talk Python all night. So what's your favorite Python sketch?
I would have to say, and it may seem like a little bit of a cop-out, but the Dead Parrot sketch, maybe because I actually got to do it as a little piece for the RIT Players Drama Club, just as a little activity. But it's so smartly written and entertaining, and John Cleese is just so on point. Argument Clinic, oh my God, another great one, great writing. Spam sketch, who doesn't love the spam sketch? That is just brilliant.
I absolutely love the Dead Parrot.
Then Cleet just getting in its face and screaming. Oh my God. That's one of those things I really wish I could have been there for. To be there in a live audience for SNL or Monty Python or anything like that, just to be in that room with that energy at that time must have been amazing.
I think if it had been in any other era, I'm not sure it would have been as successful.
I agree, because a lot of stuff they were doing was just absurd. They were pushing a lot of boundaries at the time. And now, for the most part, sensibilities have changed and not many more envelopes you can really push. I don't want to say it's been there, done that, but it's like we've been there, we've experienced it, we've learned from it, and this is how we're going to carry on, as it were.
Outside of theater and entertainment, what other hobbies do you have?
I'm a very big video game enthusiast, more so a collector. I enjoy retro gaming very much. I grew up in the age with the Atari 2600, the NES, Super Nintendo. I enjoy volleyball. I used to play some pickup games in a pickup league out here. Camping, another one that I enjoy very much, getting out in the woods and just relaxing and staring up at the stars.
The idea of having to use the outdoor facilities and doing it on a bear is not appealing to me.
Yeah, well, there's hazards with everything.
More than just a hazard.
Oh, come on. If you can't have fun with a grizzly bear, what can you do?
Good point. With the gaming, which consoles and which games do you still gravitate to and play?
My top two genres are probably platformers, like say Super Mario Brothers or Super Mario Odyssey, and puzzle type games. I'm a very big puzzle nut. Anything that makes the gears turn in my head, I'm just all about. Recently, I've been going back and playing the Donkey Kong game for the Game Boy. That was more of a puzzle game than an arcade one. I'm trying to get through Super Mario RPG before the re-release comes out for the Nintendo Switch, which I have pre-ordered. Oddly enough, as far as Zelda goes, the last one I really did there was Link to the Past. Once they went 3D, I just kind of got lost, and those just kind of fell away for me.
I still have my Donkey Kong for my Atari 400.
Oh my God, now that is classic. And it's amazing looking back at that and just seeing how much things have advanced since then. And even back then, the diversity in the quality of the ports, looking at that particular game across multiple systems, how either awful or true to the original they were at the time.
And it's amazing to think that it was state of the art for the era.
Oh, exactly. And another thing, they were pioneers. Nobody had done this before. Nobody had come up with an idea. We have media that you can actually plug in and remove to have different games played and have graphics and sound. And then on top of that, the gameplay itself to make that fun and creative. They had to learn as they went. Now, pretty much everything has been hammered out. If you were to pick up a first person shooter, it's pretty much standard how it's going to play, or a platformer, you know what to expect. Back in the day, they were throwing all kinds of stuff at the wall and seeing what stuck.
I'm guessing you were a pretty big arcade goer at one time as well.
Sort of. I can't really remember many arcades around me as a kid, but you bet your bottom dollar if I saw one, oh yeah, I would go over and easily waste a couple bucks. Wonder Boy, Outrun, Donkey Kong, Pac-Man, Mr. Doo's Castle, oh, all the quarter munchers.
My favorite was Pole Position.
Oh, pole position.
Here where I am in Dallas, they have all these retro arcade places where they have the whole stand-up video game that you can go in and play.
Actually, we do. Swillburger. It is a burger joint and a retro arcade with a bunch of coin-op machines and pinball games, and it is amazing. It's in an old church. The food is fantastic. The game selection is great. Such a nice vibe in there. Oh my God, I can't remember the last time I was there.
Sounds like you need to go.
Oh, don't force me.
You mentioned that you were a puzzler, and I'm kind of curious because this often translates over. Are you a board game and card game player as well?
Oh, you should see my attic. I was, not so much now, but I have a very large collection of board games of varying genres, card games as well. I have this huge closet just full of board games.
I'm going to test you on your card knowledge. You ever play cribbage?
Oh, that used to be one of my favorites growing up. Oh my God, I have not played that in years.
So one last thing, with your brother John, who is a megastar and pretty much gets recognized everywhere, what's a favorite story that you have with him?
There are actually two that I can think of. The first one is the very first time that I got to see him perform at the War Memorial here in Rochester. The show's done, and I get a text message from him saying, "Hey, we're backstage. We're going to get ready to leave. Do me a favor, go up to Dinosaur Barbecue and book us a table, and we'll meet you up there." Okay. So I walk up the street to the restaurant and I explain what's going on, and they get everything ready. So I'm sitting in this area that they've got reserved for us, and I look out the window, and it almost looked like a scene out of Frankenstein, where I could just see this crowd of people just walking up the street and seeing like these cell phone flashes going off. And I couldn't quite figure out what was going on until I realized the whole staff is being followed up the street. It just kind of completely off guard because I'd never seen anything like that before. Another one that I can remember also was a show that I went to. Took a group of my friends to go see him, and it was a holiday for sure. The show's done, and he starts talking about how family's important and how he's so thankful to be back in Rochester. And then all of a sudden, this spotlight hits me. And I was like, oh God. My friends are looking around me like, what's going on? And says how he's so thankful that he gets to spend some time in the city with me, and we get to hang out and make sure that everybody enjoys the time that they have with their families. And then right after he's done, security comes running over to me. Okay, yeah, you're going to come back through us. So grab me, go over the fence. I'm being led out of the arena. And I'm looking like a complete schlub because I had not expected to get a spotlight cast on me when I was just going out for like a fun night with my friends. But it was a night I will not forget.
As a big wrestling fan, that is very cool.
It definitely was.
I have to ask this. I know not that many people put two and two together, but when they do you ever get annoyed about being called John Cena's brother rather than Steve Cena?
I'll say that comes in waves. There are some times where I do find it funny, It's worse if it's a professional situation and they're not deliberately trying to do it and it just kind of happens. What's even funnier for me is when people do make the connection and then I'll explain it and they're like, no, you're not. Well, which is it? You didn't believe me when I said at the beginning. Now you don't believe me now. It's like, well, what do you want?
It's almost like you each are trying to work each other.
Oh, yeah. And oddly enough, I really do not get recognized as much as people may think. If it wasn't doing the local theater around here, most people just think I'm just some ordinary guy.
Steve, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to join me on the I Play 2 podcast today. I greatly appreciate it. I love hearing your stories about on stage, theater, growing up, and the funny story with John getting the spotlight on you. That's fantastic. Thank you so much and hope to talk to you again soon. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure being on the show with you.